I started my DA career in Austin, Texas. You know, to me, 4 ounces of coke, you know, a couple of ounces of meth were busting the streets was great. You know, I was like, wow. When I get to Colombia, I'm assigned the Medellin cartel investigation, 1988. I was in for a big awakening. At this point, it was about $1,000 to produce a kilo of cocaine. Once that kilo hit the market in Miami, it was going anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000. And these people were transporting between 5 to 7 airplanes on a daily basis. I mean, there was so much cash coming back to Colombia that they didn't know what to do with it. And the only name that was popping up was Pablo Escobar. Other traffickers were afraid of Pablo. I mean, this guy, you know, blew up airplanes, DOS building, killed the Minister of Justice, police officers. Escobar was the CEO. And right beneath him, he had Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, El Mexicano, who was probably more ruthless than Escobar. But Pablo Escobar developed into his own leadership position because his Sicario network was so vast. If they didn't agree with Escobar or they questioned him, he would send 8, 9, 10 Sicarios, say, go wipe them out. They'd wipe out the trafficker, they'd wipe out his people that were working for him. There were young assassins, anywhere from 14 to 20 years old. These kids idolized Escobar. And I remember talking to one of them. He said, we're not expected to live, you know, beyond 22, 23 years old. So if the boss, meaning Pablo Escobar, wants us to kill 20 police officers, I go kill 20 police officers. And remember, there's no extradition. So the presidential candidate is a person by the name of Luis Carlos Galan. He was going to win, and one of his platforms was on bringing back extradition. And Escobar and other traffickers have him killed. The next day, President Virgilio Barco Vargas orders that extradition is authorized on his own decree, and the war was on. We extradited about 30 traffickers, which infuriated Escobar. We started seeing 10, 15 car bombs on a daily basis. We saw the emergence of bounties on police officers. Then, you know, breaking the camel's back was the Avianca bomb and the DOS building bombing. Of course I was scared. This is another type of world, a violent world. I don't think anybody can put a number on the people he killed, but it was in the thousands.
I volunteered for an assignment in Bogota, Colombia, and actually arrived there in June 1991. Quite honestly, it was very exciting. I'd just spent 4 years in Miami, and this was at the end of the mid-'80s, and a lot of violence there. So to go into Medellin, it's like sticking your head in the lion's mouth, to be quite honest with you. 3 days after I got there is when Pablo Escobar surrendered, and I like to joke around that Pablo heard Murphy was in town, so he just went ahead and surrendered.
His conditions were, I'm gonna have my own prison, I'm gonna hire my own prison guards, and nobody can come visit me.
He negotiated surrender, which is outrageous. He was allowed to plead guilty to one crime and be absolved of everything else, to include murder. But on top of that, he negotiated terms so that the Colombian National Police, they're not allowed within 2 miles of this prison. They're the police, they're the law enforcers. I mean, what a joke. It's just a joke.
In essence, we all felt we had lost. All the innocent people getting killed, the police officers getting killed, all for nothing.
I don't mean to criticize the government of Colombia for what they did. You know, I think the president at the time was trying to come up with any idea he could come up with to stop the murder of innocent people in Colombia.
He's there about a year. Some of the Sicarios are out one night and they come across about $10 million that's buried in the ground. So they took it back to Escobar at the prison and said, hey boss, look what your 2 favorite lieutenants, look what they've been holding on you. He brings in the 2 family members. They're the head of the organization that's still supplying all the dope to the United States. Escobar thinks they were holding on him. That infuriates him. He has them killed. Both guys there in prison. So with that information, the government of Colombia sends in the Colombian military and the Vice Minister of Justice. There's a little war at the prisons, a couple of people get killed, and Escobar walks out the door.
In 1992, when he escaped from his prison, that's when it got real busy.
We just didn't say, we're going after Escobar. We're going to dismantle the organization. We're going to go after sicarios, money launderers, drug distributors, anybody associated with Pablo Escobar.
They'd fly you off and they'd drop you off on top of a mountain and you'd spend all day out on patrol, and there was actual arrests made. It was just a variety of things that you'd go out and participate in.
The corruption was there, and there were police officers assigned to the search block who were on the take. When we were going on operation, they would call Escobar, tell him, hey, we're coming. We're finally able to signal them out and get them arrested.
Just simply because we were DEA agents, there was a $300,000 price tag on our head. We'd seen a lot of our friends get killed. In fact, during that 18-month period, there were 143 Colombian National Police officers killed as a direct result of this one investigation. That starts to work on your mind a little bit, to the point where you're maintaining your professionalism, but you're thinking, if I encounter Pablo Escobar, I've got no problem pulling the trigger on this guy.
The police at the search block, they would always tell me, Javier, we're not in this to seize dope. We're not in this to seize money. We're in this to kill Pablo Escobar. So to me, it was that personal revenge factor that turned this war around.
I was a police officer for a little over 37 years. It's probably the closest I've ever come to burnout in October of '93. And by that time, we were getting to the point where we felt like we weren't even getting close to him. And you're just thinking in the back of your mind, is this thing ever going to end?
The search block is manned by Colonel Hugo Martinez, and his son is Lieutenant Martinez, who's a directional frequency expert.
You basically had a father-son good guy team against a father-son bad guy team.
Pablo's talking to his son, Juan Pablo, and they're DFing the communications.
And even if he's on his phone talking and you triangulate on that signal, by the time you get troops there, he could be 5 miles down the road. You don't know which direction he went in, so it was very hard to do. For whatever reason, Pablo stayed on the phone too long that day. So Lieutenant Martinez is out with his handheld directional finding equipment, and he ended up on the street where Pablo was at. His gauges start pointing to this house on the left. And as they drive by, Lieutenant Martinez says that Pablo looks at him while he's talking on the phone. The only time I ever saw Pablo Escobar was on December 2nd, 1993. I saw a lot of activity in the quad outside the colonel's office, so I went over to the colonel's office to find out what was going on. And then the next thing that comes up on the radio is the major calling in saying, hey, we just engaged in a firefight with Pablo Escobar. And the one thing I remember from the conversation was, Viva Colombia, Pablo is dead. All the search blocks going out, and my orders are to get out there and verify that this is Pablo Escobar. You can imagine the excitement. The local citizenry knows something big has happened because all of a sudden you've got 600 Colombian National Police officers milling around this area. So they take us up to the 3rd floor where, lo and behold, out there on the roof of this 2-story behind them is a body. What I was told is that he was shot once in the leg, once in the rump, and then he had one bullet hole in the side of his head. There have been books written that would lead you to believe that there was this miraculous sniper shot from a mile away, but I know where the Americans were because I was with them at the base. I know where they all were. I'm not saying this to take anything away from their capabilities. I'm just saying what the truth is that they were all at the base with me. Security detail took me back to the Carlos Holguin. This was probably an hour after we'd gotten there. And honestly, we went into lockdown because we expected a retaliatory attack that night. But it was one of the quietest nights in Medellin I ever experienced. On the day that Escobar was killed, I'm the guy that took all the photographs. I just happened to have a camera with me. And honestly, you kind of get caught up in the moment and the elation, realizing that it's finally over. The citizens of Colombia are now safe from this guy. And you can imagine they were very happy. We were all happy this was over. So that's how the picture came about. There's been negative things said about me because of the photograph. Honestly, I don't care. I was glad to be a part of that. I was glad the way it ended. I'm proud to have been a part of that.
It's a lesson in history, how one person can challenge his own country, and it's something that's real, that happened, and a lot of innocent people got killed. The overall objective is to try to get people not to use this dangerous dope. But as long as you have a trafficker who's gonna threaten someone or give you money, how do you solve that?
What are you gentlemen gonna do with your time?
Interviews. Actually, we've continued our partnership into a little business, and we actually go out and speak at conferences, law enforcement training sessions. We haven't really slowed down a whole lot, to be honest with you.